absolutely delighted to be with you. Is this all right if I stand here? I'll need a little help with my PowerPoint, so if someone could come and click the slides, that would be good. I'm particularly delighted to be here because this is such a special time for you here in Thailand. And you will forgive me, but I would like to say Rao Ruk Nai Liang and Song Pra Charien. The purpose of us being here today is to look at how we can get the parents to read. And recently we did some research in the UK on the Reading Connect school movement by the National Literacy Trust. They asked 8,000 children, did they see their fathers reading? And 25% of them said they never saw their fathers read. Now it seems to me that if parents, and particularly male parents, don't see reading as important or something that they do in their lives, then we shouldn't be surprised if children equally don't think that it matters or that it's important to read, or even more so, that it's pleasurable and fun to read. Because it seems that if we read only for functional reasons and we don't read because of the pleasure of reading, then why ever would young people want to do something that's either hard work or not much fun? So what's happening at the moment is that a group of us, it seems to me that we're all determined to approach our government for funding to make 2008 a national year of fathers reading. And the pictures you see here are the reading and the sharing of knowledge and learning by fathers with their children, and even by younger men as well, who are really becoming role models for reading in our country. I think I should say that mine is a personal view based on my experience of working with readers for a long time. Readers in libraries, readers out of libraries, people for whom reading isn't a pleasure at all. People internationally in my work in the British Council all around the world, and the different cultures of reading that there are. And at the moment, in my work in Read On Right Away, we work with people for whom reading has never been a pleasure. And in fact, it's been something that they've not enjoyed at all. And the challenge is to understand why and to overcome those barriers towards reading. So I'll say a little more about that later. But for me, understanding what makes people love reading is the key, and why we're all here. When I talk about reading, I talk about reading experiences, and I don't only mean reading books. I mean reading the screen. I mean reading the movie or the film, reading the image visually or the moving image, and being able to be literate in the biggest sense of that word. Because for all of us, we need to read in order to write our lives. In this presentation, I'd like to reflect on the reasons why some people get reading as a lifelong habit and an enrichment of their lives, and others don't. As I say, I've observed as well thousands of people making reading choices in a host of environments: schools, libraries, bookshops, on the net, and through people watching. I've some observations to share about what are the critical success factors in creating a climate for readers for life to flourish. And I also want to share some reflections on where this seemingly media-rich, strange new young generation who multimedia task in their lives are headed, and to share with you some thoughts on what will influence their reading choices in the next 5 to 10 years. So I hope you'll challenge me. I hope it's provocative and that you'll find some things that you want to ask or discuss, because I hope that this will be a session we can all take part in. Now, the power of personal reader-to-reader recommendation is absolutely fundamental. It's the single most potent force in reading choices, and every one of you knows this. If you can remember back when you were a small child and your best friend was reading a book, and your best friend wouldn't talk to you because this book was so good and it was so gripping, and they didn't even want to leave a single page unturned. And you'd say, "What's the book about?" And they wouldn't talk to you, they'd just raise the cover. And then you'd say, "Well, what's the story?" And they'll say, "Shush, I'm reading." And then you'd say, "Well, can I read it after you?" And so that power of wanting the reading experience that someone else has had. Or another experience that I have had myself is reading a book on a train. And it was so funny that I laughed out loud. And the other people in the train carriage were trying really hard to see what I was reading, because they wanted some of that. They wanted some of the pleasure and the enjoyment that we find in our reading. Even Amazon have discovered that reader-to-reader recommendation is enormously powerful in selling books, because if somebody makes a recommendation, then you want to read it too. The evolution in the UK of a new language of talking about your reading, or book talking, is largely thanks to a woman called Rachel Van Reel, who runs a company called Opening the Book, and this is the front cover of their website. And it's been very influential in setting a new agenda for people being able to talk about their reading, and it being fine to do so. I'd say about 5 years ago, people who were doing book reviews were thought to be very important and very influential, and they spoke about the quality of the book, the literature content. Now we have a whole group of people who talk about the reading experience, about how a book made them feel, or whether it encouraged them to think differently, or whether it stopped them in their tracks because they had thought that if they were a person like the person in the book, then they would be a certain way, but they learned that it wasn't so. So to read, to discover, and to know, and to understand what it feels like to be someone else are the things that are running through the thousands of reading groups that are springing up every day and are very live and active across the UK. It can be simple physical ways in which people share their reading, like this reading wall, where there are just simply ideas posted up. It can be done in any library, very simply. Just ask people what they thought of the book they read. And other people will read it and make up their own minds. Are you okay? It can also be done on the web with this site called foryoureaders.net, which has different sub-sites within it. One of them for the lads, one of them for girls with attitude, one of them for Eclair, which is for younger girls, and something called Book Brother as well. This is one of the sites, Girls with Attitude, and it focuses on music with attitude. So a lot of our reading has been centred, and our development of reading interest starts with the interest of the young person. If a parent says to us in a library, "My son doesn't read, he doesn't like reading, I really want him to read more, what can I do?" Our first question to him is, what is he interested in? Does he like football? Does he really enjoy cars? What sports does he like to do? And then we find stories that are associated with football, associated with his interests. We find magazines about cars that he might like to enjoy. So the thing is, you start with the interests of the person, not with that they need to read because it's good for them. So this shows you the music books that are on the website that people share and enjoy. And this is a picture of the lads, which is the zone of foryoureaders.net for boys. So it's a new cool really of reading in the UK. To me, though, why has it become so popular and so well funded in the UK? And I have a very simple answer to that, and that is that we have gathered the evidence. We have tracked what has happened to people because of reading. We've been able to assess change, check whether the original impacts have been sustained, and also we've been able to understand how repeated working with a service changes users. Let me give you an example. Someone who comes into a library and used to read when they were young, and the person I'm telling you about is my mother actually. She used to read when she was young, and then when she was bringing up 3 children, she had a very busy life working and bringing up the children. And what that meant was that she had no time to read. And in fact, when she did read, she found reading quite difficult because she had got unused to reading. So when she was reading a magazine, she would follow the words with her finger underneath each word. And then when my mother retired, she decided she would go to the library. And my mother's very interested in history. So she decided to read some novels about history and about the past. And then she thought, well, perhaps I'll read some factual books about history and about the past. And she began to read those. And then one day I passed her a book and I said, this is a good historical book, I think you'll enjoy it. And my mother read that book. And that book was a Booker Prize winner. It was called Possession by A.S. Byatt. Now, if I had told my mother that she was reading a Booker Prize winner, she would have said, no, I can't do that. I'm not a good reader. But you see, she followed a journey in her reading, and it's never too late to read or to reignite the flame of enjoying reading. So by thinking about people's reading lives, not their reading moments, but the whole of their life and reading and the role it plays in different parts of their life, we can better understand and ignite reading or reignite reading. Bookstart in the UK is a fantastic example of how the research has affected the funding. What they found with Books for Babies was that not only did early reading affect reading fluency when young people started school, but it also affected their achievement in concentration and observation so much that they were more successful in every subject than other children who had not had the early experience of reading. And it was evidence-based. We knew that they were better at maths, they were better at science, they were better in everything because they had learned to concentrate, because they had learned to observe, and because they had learned to love and enjoy reading. As a result of that, we now have 3 packs of books and other things that go to every child born in the UK. They get these packs at 8 months, at 2 years and at 3 years old. And we're doing that, and the government, the Treasury, is doing that and paying for that because it believes it's going to invest in not only a literate nation, but an imaginative and innovative nation also. Because if we read to discover, if we are entrepreneurial in our reading, if we are entrepreneurial in our lives, then we are good for our country. And we are good for the future prosperity of our country because we become independent and excited thinkers and exciting people as well. Libraries have also learned the power of letting people speak for themselves. And this is a quote from a mother who received a Bookstart pack. I think the Bookstart pack is wonderful. I'm really enjoying introducing my baby to books. He loves the books that we receive in the pack, and it spurred me on to buy more books and to share with him, which we do every evening before bed. It has also encouraged us to visit our local library and borrow books. Thank you for this wonderful scheme. We've also been able to harness strong advocates, and there's an organisation called the Reading Agency in the UK, which has rapidly developed into a very strong and good organisation. And what it does is it develops public libraries' work with readers, aiming to inspire a reading nation. It works with libraries and their partners. The nimble organisation is behind many of the reading initiatives, including the Future Libraries Partnership, which is driving a campaign called Love Libraries. This campaign's going on right now, so I can't give you the outcome of it. But it's doing 3 things. It's transforming 3 libraries in 12 weeks across the UK into models of 21st century reading centres. And it wants to physically show what it looks like when you put the library at the heart of a development and when you look to the future. The second is it's nominating the top 10 libraries in the country. And the third thing it's doing is to actually gather library champions from across the country. So we have writers like J.K. Rowling of Harry Potter fame talking about libraries. We have famous people like our Prime Minister and others talking about what libraries mean for them. And in fact, the Prime Minister's wife, Sherry Booth, is a fantastic advocate of public libraries in the UK. So the idea is the library becomes a vibrant, inspiring community resource for readers on and offline. And if I might say a little, I think that is what TKP is doing. It is a vibrant and inspiring resource for readers online and offline to enable them to learn and grow their lives. And I look to you and to your model of what you've done here because I think it is world class. There is nothing as wonderful as TKP in the UK. It is a model that is international and wonderful. And I just want you to congratulate yourselves on that achievement. It's absolutely super. So please. So the Love Libraries campaign is transforming one of the libraries I used to run called Richmond Library in London. These are just some images from the library. You can see not all libraries are perfect or new or modern, but you can do something, whatever your library is like, you can do something to transform it. Don't want to miss out the football. Champions like these, which the National Literacy Trust are encouraging, people with a passion for reading and a passion for football, a passion for cricket and a passion for reading, a passion for boxing and a passion for reading. All of these people are getting together to celebrate and say, reading, it's great. We also have people talking on the media about reading and about their books. And this is David and Zoe talking about reading the game on a TV show for young people. I love this image. This is from my own project. And this young man is, as you can say, very proud because he has at his shoulder one of his heroes, one of the local Chesterfield Football Club players. And you can see the sense of pride. And I think that if that young player tells him that reading is cool, he will read and read and read. There's no question about it. And this is our Prime Minister launching our quick reads, which are all about a whole set of new books that are very quick to read, very short, and very suited for our busy daily lives. Because we've all realised the power of reading in hard terms, in economic terms, but also in soft terms, in enriching our lives. And that's quick reads. Let's just look at a few statistics. I won't dwell very long on here, and you will have the presentation, so you'll be able to see them. But basically, how many hours are young people spending on reading? And as you can see, in our lives, it changes. We spend quite a lot of time reading when we're 17 to 24. That could be because we're studying as well. But then our lives get very busy, and then it picks up again, perhaps at retirement. And this is a natural pattern. But at the moment, we think that the key issue for people everywhere is time. How many people say to you, I have no time to read, or I have less time than I used to read? And I think that's true of many parents. And if parents but realised what a role model they are for their children, if they do not take time to be seen by their children to make time for reading, then nothing anyone can do will change children from seeing reading as unimportant. So there are things that we can do as adults to create the next generation of readers. And of course, increasingly, reading is competing for a share of our leisure time. We have computers. I think they're wonderful. I think, though, that there are some things that you can do on the computer that is better than reading in a book. It may be getting a current piece of information. It may be enjoying a webcast of an event that's going on elsewhere in the world. I think that's wonderful. But there are other things that you do with a book, and that's appropriate too. So many people tell us that they're not using libraries, mainly because there's no reason to go. They don't see libraries as really relevant in their lives, or that they're too busy, or that they buy their books anyway. What we found is some age differences. Older people, and this will maybe be very common sense to you, will focus their borrowing on books and looking at newspapers and magazines. But younger people are more likely to want CDs and videos and to seek information and a good, quiet place to study. That's what they've told us that they really want. And I'll tell you a bit more about the research in a minute. And then we looked at the changing behaviour amongst 7 to 14-year-olds. What's happened in the last 5 years, or a 5-year window anyway, between 1997 and 2001. And the key thing to note here is the growth in computer games, that people really are interested in enjoyment and taking their leisure playing interactive games on the computer. So how can we make games out of reading? How can we work with this trend to encourage reading and development? But what concerns us in the UK is we're seeing less time for friends, interestingly enough. Less time to play with their friends, 11% less time to take part in any sport. And we have a challenge with health of young people because they're less physically active than they used to be. They used to play a lot, they used to do sport, and now they're much more sedentary in front of computers, sitting down, that kind of thing. And then we looked at what changes if you're 5 to 8 years old and if you're 9 to 12 years old. And you can see that there's a switch at this age between print and computers. That when people are 5 to 8, 68% are engaging in reading and text. But that is overtaken by computers when they're 9 to 12 years old. And of course, for boys and girls, you might not be surprised, it's different. For girls, print remains the dominant form of what they take part in, and for boys, it's computers. I'll skip over that one. So basically, what I've said is that people are becoming more solitary, but more technologically active. They're also, we think that these features are going to be the defining characteristic of the next generation. And research would indicate that there's an inverse relationship between reading and computers. The more you read, the less you use computers. The more you use computers, the less you read. That's what the facts seem to tell us. But then we thought, let's look at the obstacles. What's in the way? And it's to do with time. I don't have the time to read, say, 16 to 25-year-olds. I can go elsewhere. I can get my reading on the net, perhaps. And it's just not for me, and they don't have relevance or interest. Books, the image of libraries as boring and dusty, intimidating and old-fashioned. So they're saying to us, make your libraries modern, make them for me, make them exciting and relevant, give me a reason to go beyond books. Okay. So in summary then, let me just tell you a little bit about the recent research we've done on 11 to 19-year-olds called Fulfilling Their Potential. It was undertaken by the Reading Agency, and it worked with focus groups of young people with 3 themes in mind. What are your needs? What do young people 11 to 19 want? Secondly, the government's policy and ambition is for young people to participate much more in the services that they receive. So how are we doing there? And what are the strengths of the library service in responding to these challenges? It concluded that libraries do have a distinctive role in improving the quality of life of all young people, and to go further. It recommends new directions and a minimum national offer from libraries to young people. And it encourages libraries to be more responsive to young people's needs in designing their services and more dynamic in delivering and marketing them. Wherever young people live, they are entitled to these 5 things. The library as the space and community for them to gather, inspiring relevant reading, including creative reading activities, the chance to get involved to shape their library service, and that is brilliantly done here in TKP with the involvement of young people in every aspect of the library and the living library's development. The library is the place to participate in the wider community, and the library as an independent place for information and study support. You know, when I see libraries and people say young people aren't reading anymore, they are. They're just reading differently. They're reading the screen, they're reading experiences, they're just reading just the same as ever, but in a different way. And secondly, they say young people aren't coming to libraries, but they are. They're using libraries as study spaces, as places to meet their friends and to enjoy and have a good time and to explore possibilities in their lives. I could, however, say that the report has been really influential, and in the next 3 years, standards for services to this 11 to 19-year-old age group are going to grow and be adhered to across the UK. We have pockets of good practice. Now we're going to make sure every young person gets what they're entitled to and what they deserve, an excellent and welcoming service. The point that reading is good for you could not be more out of favour, and it's well understood that we need to have compelling offers to attract people into or back into reading in their busy lives. Otherwise, they simply won't do it. I could show you many examples of a parent and a carer coming into the library, and without opening their mouths, you would know that the young person is miserable. They would be glad when they could read, and then they wouldn't have to anymore. There's an aura of infectious fear or worry around themselves because their parent is so worried, and they catch that. And they're really never going to enjoy reading because they think they have to read, not because they want to. Equally perplexing would be the book-addicted parent who loves reading, who's always showing that they're reading and got their nose in a book to their child, and they just can't understand why their child doesn't like reading as well. Why is that? Well, maybe they are. Maybe they will be interested in reading later, or maybe they're just rebelling against their parent. But the real enemy and the real challenge of both scenarios is the fearful distraction from the real issue, reading because you want to, not because you have to. There's a host of motivations and contexts for reading, isn't there? You know this. We read to laugh. We read to escape from our busy lives and to chill out. We read to be inspired by the lives and the thinking of other people. We read to be uncomfortable and to be thought-provoked into thinking something different. We read to try out a different life. We read to satisfy our satiable curiosities about things, people and places. And it may be different at different times in our lives. I can remember picking up Middlemarch when I was younger, a large book that I found very boring when I read it the first time. And then when I was older, I reread it, and I simply think it's the most mature and enduring novel about adult living that I've ever read. So you see, you can think different things at different points in your life. But What do young people think about reading? Research is clear, as I've said, more girls than boys are into reading, and that reading changes over time, especially by the use of other media. But for some youngsters, there's already a sense of being left behind. For others, they use knowledge and power of reading as an advantage. It starts with young children in the playground. They'll read joke books so that they can tell the best jokes to their friends in the playground. For others, they love the imaginative world of reading, and they use that to stimulate their own imagination and their own creative output. Well, what do they want? Do they want books or computers? Well, we asked young people, and they thought we were crazy to ask. They said that's not the right question. It's about books and computers. It's about, I want both. I don't want either or. I want books melded with technology. I think the book is the first portable world that you can have, that you can take over distance and over time, because you can read the minds of people who lived a long time ago. And the formal evaluation of our People's Network, which put internet access into every public library in the UK, said this: public libraries are being revitalised and transformed by the introduction of computers, because frankly we know what to do with them. We know that they can help in people's lives. Let me tell you the key findings. 16% of the public aged 16 and over have used the internet in a public library. It's been a huge success in attracting even more young people and teenagers into the library, even more. The credibility of the library has been enhanced. It's now seen as modern and up to date. Users are overwhelmingly positive about computers in libraries. Even older people are very positive. They can see that computers are important in the lives of the next generation, and they welcome them. And it's developed the confidence of our users and our staff, who are simply good at getting the information from the internet for their readers. The report said, however, that our big challenge is capacity. How can we continue to drive forward the vision of ICT within the modern public library? So that's our challenge. We have to keep on trying to make more and more of our limited numbers of staff, to make sure we continue to respond to the people we care about, the people that use our services. This is what some people said. The session Learning to Use a Computer was very helpful and opened a new world to me. Someone else said, the computers are great fun for all ages. And a third instance, at Moore Allerton Library, a man found details of a friend who had died during World War II. We used the Commonwealth War Graves site to find the details. He was reduced to tears when he saw where his friend was buried and all the details about him. So you see, it may seem like hard technology, but it's actually about the passion of the heart and the head together. Libraries are reaping further rewards of being trusted, modern, and living by inclusion in the next wave of programmes and initiatives. There's a national online service for the public now. You can ask a librarian 24 hours a day, and for half of those hours they will be answered live by a librarian anywhere in the UK, and for the other 12 hours we've got a link up with the States. That means that librarians in America answer inquiries. So you can ask absolutely anything. Discover is a new service as well, where you can personalise the information that you want to gather. And Read provides people with access to reader services, making innovative connections. And also they can look up their nearest reading group right across the country. So it puts people in touch. But you know, there's something I want to share with you called book hunger. In the lives of too many children, the book is a rarity, not a commonplace. But the resilience of young lives is extraordinary, and the hope of our time, I think. There are real and urgent hungers, and it's a crime to leave them unsated. The experience of young people in the UK of real writers should not be a treat, it should be a right. And the Reading Connects initiative, which you'll hear about next month from Julia Strong from the National Literacy Trust, is spreading like wildfire across schools. Every school in the UK is set to build a reading culture. But this book hunger I experienced firsthand 2 years ago when I went to Buenos Aires for a Words on Words conference. Now, we had a magic pencil exhibition which was all about illustrations, and Argentinian illustrators were working with UK illustrators with a small exhibition. And for a photo for La Nation, I sat next to a girl who was about 7 years old. And I thought it would be nice to talk to her because she had beside her a pile of books. And so I sat next to her and I picked up one of the books to say to her, "Oh, that's a very nice story." And she snatched the book from my hand. And I didn't understand why for a little while. And then I looked at her and I watched and I talked to colleagues, and then I understood that if you're living in Argentina, the cost of a book is equivalent to a month's salary because of the inflation that they've had. It's been enormous. So for that child, she may be, if she was lucky, of that pile of books she had beside her, be able to select one book. And I was invading her personal reading time. She was having to try to choose which book she might keep and savour and treasure and enjoy. So I understood then reading hunger, and I never want to see that kind of reading hunger in young people again. Of course, obviously, I'd suggest that public libraries help because you can borrow. It doesn't depend on how much money you've got in your pocket to buy books. These are Reading Champion pictures from the National Literacy Trust, where we say reading is the new cool. You can be Superman if you read, so it's wonderful. But what we have is a summer reading challenge every summer, and last year 600,000 people read and read and read during the summer. And this year they have different themes to it, and this year it's all about the reading mission, and you're a secret spy and you've got a secret special mission attaché case, and you can read through the summer and you can write your reviews in invisible ink, and it's going to be really fun for young people. And I'm so pleased that this is also taking place in 42 countries around the world now, because all of the British Council are taking up the reading challenge, and so can you. You'd be very welcome to join in our reading challenge. But you know, this doesn't just happen, the power of reading and enjoying reading, without the people to inspire that reading. And when I was working in Leeds and in Essex, I bucked the trend because I said I want to have children's specialists in my libraries. I want them to be able to inspire and know about reading choices, to be able to really recommend good reads to young people, to know all the books that are published, to know who's good, to understand what might be the next best book for that child. And so what people need is that reading champion in their lives, the person who will inspire them into reading. For me, it was my grandfather who took me to the library, who read much himself and who inspired me into reading. And I suppose I want that adult, whether it's the librarian, the children's specialist, the parent or the caring friend in the family, to actually enable young people to have the same chances that I have had. In the UK, we have something called the Carnegie Greenaway Awards, which is really the Booker of the playground. And what the Carnegie Greenaway Awards do every year is they celebrate the writing for young children with a very prestigious award. And that award is for picture books and for children's books. But what I wanted to tell you about was that over 40,000 children now shadow the awards. So they get and look at the 12 long-listed titles, and they have a view and a say about what they think should win. So it's wonderful. They can write their reviews on a website, And on this Carnegie Greenaway website, they can see videos of all of the authors and illustrators talking and demonstrating for the illustrators how they draw. And it's very exciting because you'll actually feel very close to the writers. But it's also very exciting because the young people can actually see what other young people are writing about their books, and they get into really good arguments and discussions about why one book is better than another. And that's the stuff of reading. That's the excitement of it. You see, a book like The Uniqueness of Reading, I think that's different about any other form, is that you can control the pace of your reading. You can spin the words faster or slower. You can return and relish things. The success of this book, Where the Wild Things Are, is all about the lack of power in a young child's life and the urge to be king. Max is king of all the wild things. And you can escape from or escape to your life through reading. The stress buster focus of this site, Give Me a Break, is important in our time-sparse lives. It says read to relax, read to get away from it all, read so that you can cope better, a release mechanism in your life. It's wonderful. In my own organisation, Read On Right Away, we see a direct relationship between people wanting to learn and people feeling well about themselves. If you share books with your child that make you laugh as well, then everyone is happier. And that's why I think funny books are great, because it makes you laugh and your child laugh. And I predict that the next big thing is going to be bibliotherapy, where you use books for health, I suppose. And in the UK, we now have a project that is spreading called Books on Prescription, where in doctors' surgeries, doctors, instead of prescribing antidepressants, will prescribe reading for people. And they go to their library and they get books to understand better their condition, or simply to relax, or simply to know more if they're unwell. And here's some of the books that are included. Also, we now have a generation that is reflecting a growing diversity in our children's lives. There's a variation in family structures now. I mentioned Jacqueline Wilson because she writes about young people who are in foster care or who are adopted, or young people who do not have traditional families. And she's very concerned that their lives are chaotic. And if I have one wish, it's that more and more writers will reflect the growing diversity of young people's lives. You know, it really is only technology. 2 years ago, we had a world first. Alec Williams, a storyteller, was telling stories in Kuala Lumpur at the British Council video conferencing centre. He connected up with young people in Delhi and young people in Japan. And together, they joined in the rhymes. And we didn't realise that it was going to be so nice, because the time delay meant that everybody joined in at different times, and they had a wonderful experience. Now, for those young people who were doing that video conference, they didn't think, wow, this is a video conference. They thought, I wonder if the teachers are as strict in Delhi as they are in Japan. And what's your school uniform like? And how many pets do you have? And are your stories exciting in your country like they are in ours? So they wanted to know, they wanted to find out, and technology just was a tool for them to do that. I love the interplay between the web and books. I think it's wonderful to be able to pick up a book and then check out a website to make you more alert and aware. And lurking for literacy is what our organisation is all about. Reading stealthily to enable people to develop their reading and choices and get into reading without realising they've got into reading. So we talk about health and beauty, we talk about lifestyle, we use the interests in comics and magazines and graphic novels of young people, because we just want people to relish and share the joy and the practicality of reading in our own lives. These buddy readers are very influential. This young man has been in care and he's helping a younger person to read. And for him, that's actually turning him back onto reading, where he didn't think he was good at reading, and he now finds he certainly is good at reading, and he certainly has changed the life of a younger reader. We push book talk in Derbyshire, and I want to close for questions soon, so I'll say a little less than I would have done. But for book talk, we have young people who talk about their reading to other young people. They read pieces from their books. And they're very brave because they meet some of their peers who say reading's rubbish, reading's boring. But they still say, well, you may think that, but I think that this is an excellent book. I really enjoyed this. Now, these young people are very brave, I think, but surely that courage to stand out is what reading's all about. Reading is a dangerous business. Reading enables people to think about other possibilities. It enables them to dream, and it enables them to discover that maybe they could too do something that would be different and unusual in their lives, in their extraordinary lives. So if reading is so dangerous and wonderful, then we want to be ready for a generation of people who will think independently, who will read in order to shape their lives, and who will think for themselves and make their own minds up about issues and situations. Because, you see, I think it's not the books read, but the reading lives, the reading journeys experience that will count, and the richness of that journey, the variation, the choice, the hues of our reading lives. People, you know, they do die of ignorance. If I do not know I have a choice, how can I make that choice? If I've never experienced the best, how can I compare? If I don't glimpse the way things might be different, then how can I escape the tyranny of how things are? If I've never drunk deeply of being inside a story, in another's skin, how can I understand and feel empathy if my only experiences are as I am, rather than as I might be or as others are? I think in this war-torn, polluted and endangered world, I would argue that reading sets us free. Now, in one sense, reading will never be the same again. We've got crowded choices. We have visual literacy, we have media literacy, we have critical thinking and assessment. And the competition for one's creative leisure time has never been greater. But I think that's okay. I think people will seek knowledge in a range of ways. And the currency of online quality-assured information can be in no doubt. It is great to have good information immediately. It's a great power to have. But you know, the black and white squiggles upon the page continue to cast rainbows in the mind. Books and magazines will blur boundaries. We'll see more books that look like magazines and more magazines that look like books. I think we'll see all sorts of added information develop about books, about reading. And I think the future lies in creative knowledge parcels. That is our business, of animating those parcels. I'll make another prediction, that young people will be more discerning and more careful in their choices. They'll base it on who they trust to ask, what could I read next? They'll looking further. I think we could, in 5 years' time, be looking at personal trainers for your reading. Now, some of you may have personal trainers for fitness and may have someone at the gym that guides you. Now, what about the mind gym? What about the mental well-being of all of us in terms of our reading, in terms of our learning? And I think we feel overwhelmed with email and other things overwhelming our lives. Time to read is definitely going to compete with other choices. But I do think most of all that it will be here, and the reading experience and the reading live will, I would dare to suggest, be the distinctive and key ingredient for successful nations around the world. Because for me, reading is life. It's not an alternative to life. It's an enrichment of life. And through reading, each one of us in this room can live many lives. And that's a wonderful experience to have. We've got a new generation of creative young people just around the corner who are going to have high impact on this world. For us as librarians, as knowledge animateurs, we're transforming into essential knowledge workers with creativity and impact. And look around you, because you may be looking at your own personal coach for your reading. I wanted to just close with this quote, which has just been made by Frank Delaney. And I think I want to close with a tribute to Dr. Siricorn and her leadership, because in this quote, she and he have summed up what it's all about. And my experience of the last wonderful 4 days here in Bangkok have led me to the same wonderful conclusion, that there are some places you love with your heart, and there are some places that you love with your mind. The places that you love with both are called libraries, and the most wonderful place is the Thai Knowledge Park. Thank you so much, everyone.